Welcome to Gagliardi's Got Real Estate Podcast, hosted by myself, Gerald, Sabri, and Rocky Gagliardi. We look forward to bringing you something fresh, something new the Goulburn Valley hasn't seen before. More informative information. We've got special guests, hot topics. Make sure you follow on your preferred podcast platform, GSRE socials. We hope you enjoy this episode.
Welcome to Gagliardi Scott podcast number 10. We're very fortunate today to have Homesafe, GV Homesafe as our special guest today, and we're going to talk about all things about maintenance and the importance of it, in particular for landlords and tenants and the new era and modern era of all compliance and governance. So I'll introduce, and we'll start from the far right, and Peter Hill. You're CEO, Peter, is that right?
Yeah, I am, Rocky, yes.
Yeah, just a bit of an intro, a bit of background in yourself too. It'll be good to know even your bit of history, which is like I know about it, but the public probably need to know about it.
Came to Shepparton 36 years ago for 6 months on a posting in the police force and never left.
Never left?
No, fell in love with the place. I had my arms crossed and my face blue for the first 4 months, didn't like it as a 28-year-old, but fell in love with the place, married up here. Son up here, so yeah, been very, very happy the last 36 years in Shepparton.
Yeah, fantastic. And Lucas, the owner of GV Homesafe, a bit about your history and how it evolved, and a bit about your business. And
yeah, we started the business part-time 2014, sort of saw a niche in the market that was sort of not filled, and we moved away in 2011 and had our house rented out and realised that Melbourne companies were doing what we're currently doing now, and so yeah, we started up a smoke alarm business, GV Smoke Alarms back then, and the rest is history. So yeah,
done really well, grown. And I've also got Bree Byrne from our office, is one of our property managers, but more importantly, bit of background for you, Bree. You've got a legal background, which is very handy in this situation, in this podcast, to give some sort of informed opinions on our landlords that are listening out there.
Mm-hmm. Yep, well, as much as possible anyway.
Yeah. A bit about your background, Bree.
Yeah, sure. Well, I've been at Gagliardi Scott since March. And
that long, geez.
Yeah, it is. It's been that long. So I've come over from, as you said, Rocky, a legal background. Done a few different things over the years, but always kept coming back to that.
Yep.
So property management is an interesting beast. I'm quite enjoying it. Yeah. Certainly a lot to get your head around, but compliance is one of those really interesting things that seems to be at the forefront of what we're doing at the moment.
Yeah, so it's important to talk about that. That's why we're here today, the compliance. Well, it's the modern era, isn't it? Like, obviously, Lucas, with your business and how it evolved from smoke alarms. So just go back on, I remember we were just talking about it off air before about once upon a time we used to have the daylight savings, and that used to be the reminder with the battery change and all that sort of stuff, but it's become more serious than that. So just go through, how it started with the smoke alarms and how it's evolved to today and where your business is at the moment.
Yeah, mate. So we started obviously smoke alarms in 2014 in a part-time role. Had one real estate which is Mark McNamara real estate back then, for the first 3 years, and started to get our teeth into it and get our process and systems around just doing smoke alarms. 2017. Quit my job and went into it full time, and from there, the smoke alarms sort of, we had to. We had to obviously service those regularly for landlords and things like that. So, and then from there, it's sort of evolved from law changes to in 2021 into gas and electrical. But yeah, early days certainly the smoke alarm component. People think that changing the battery is good enough. A lot of people don't realise there's actually an expiry date on a smoke alarm.
Yeah. I didn't know that myself. There you go. That's the first time I heard.
Yeah, so it's
smoke alarm.
Well, I think I might have changed yours over at one stage.
I just let the experts do it.
That's right. But it's funny. So and there's different. So a house that's built prior to 1997. Can still have battery-operated smoke alarms. Yeah. House that's built after 1997 but before 2013 has to be hardwired. Anything after 2013 has to be interconnected, which means that if one goes off, they all go off. But
I didn't know that. That's very good.
The most common thing we walk into and would be out-of-date smoke alarms. So being a safety I guess, component of the house. It's just important to have up-to-date smoke alarms.
Yeah, it's interesting because, like you were saying before, if you're not, if you're in a deep sleep, smoke's coming through. You can't smell it when you're sleeping, but you can hear it. So it's important. And
That's
it's
right.
obviously important for the landlords as their duty of care for the tenants as well. We were just saying before, just our office ourselves in the last sort of 6 months or so, we've had three houses burned down.
Yeah, right.
Which is, I don't know how much the smoke alarms played in that, but they're older homes, that Brie?
Oh, two of them were. The third escapes me at the moment.
Yeah.
But yeah, yep.
So it just gives you an idea how history was and how that goes. We've seen a lot with the government, state government changing a lot of regulations, and we're talking about that before with how important it is. And a lot of landlords will say to us, it's expensive, and yeah, it does. It gets expensive, all these checks, because they're built on top of everything. But the ramifications, the graphic ramifications, we just talked about three house fires, but no one passed away in that regards. But we'll lead on to the gas part of it too, where we had that family in Maroopna that passed away a number of years ago. Two young kids that didn't wake up. And the accusations obviously for the mum, but then later on we worked out it was the gas, the silent killer.
It was, yeah.
So that's come into it as well. So just explain that and why that, what the gases are, because the layman person probably doesn't understand how that can affect you.
And it's funny, like that one. It's definitely not funny, but it's ironic that that was. There's a test that we've got to do when we service heaters, and it's called a negative pressure test. And I'm not sure whether many people know what this is, but what it does is naturally flued heaters. The gases are naturally flued out. If you go into a house and turn on every exhaust fan, whether that be in the kitchen, bathrooms, it can create a negative pressure inside the house. So what that does is it actually sucks gas back down the flue, which then obviously brings that into the house, and that's what happened in Maroopna. And then I think in 2022, a similar thing happened to an elderly lady in Geelong. So, and that's when all those laws started to change, because from 2022 now, it's illegal to sell an open fluid heater or install a second-hand one. They're still able to be in rentals, but yeah, they've just got to be serviced. Regularly, just for that check especially, as well as all the other ones, because people are always updating their houses, putting, they've gone from the old fan in the toilet or the bathroom to an IXL with a super duper fan in it, and then all that does is create extra draw and potentially pulls that gases down the chimney.
Yeah, it becomes important. We've got our own compliance, which we'll touch about in a minute, Peter. But with the onus then becomes on your business as well, and as well as ours, and any real estate agency. But how do you keep on top of that? Like, how do you maintain, and obviously the pushback you get from clients as well, because you deal directly with the client, that mainly being the landlord?
Yep. Yeah, look, you do, but it's a matter of educating and helping people understand that there's a lot more importance than the value of what it is to get these things serviced. I mean, we're talking about, as Bree mentioned, 3 houses that have burnt down. That's one consequence. The big consequence is people actually dying. So it's a matter of making people understand that this is something that's going to save their life and save their property. So it's like an insurance, it's like any sort of insurance. And if unfortunately you're at a position where you make a claim, you're going to want to hope you've got the best insurance possible. So it's just about education from our perspective.
So when your business, Lucas, one of your tradies go out, they see older type heater.
Yep.
You obviously suit out to the landlord and talk to, and they get pushback. What do you do then, in the sense if they say, no, I don't want to do it? How does that, do you go back to the agent, or do you go directly to the owner? How do you work on that?
So,
on a legal perspective, because then you're exposed, I'm guessing.
Yes.
So,
everyone is.
Yeah.
Everyone, the owner, the renter's obviously exposed living there, but the agent as well as us, because we're all now aware that there's something that's not compliant with the regulations.
Yeah, look, like the heater might still be compliant. So if there's an old heater that's been serviced regularly, it's still legally okay to be in the property. It's only when it's either leaking carbon monoxide or there's a negative pressure issue that comes into effect, and that's when we have that discussion about pulling it out. If we identify carbon monoxide at the property, we have to isolate that heater straight away. That's why we predominantly like to do a lot of our services outside of that real busy winter months, because the thing is that you're cutting someone's heater off in the middle of winter in Shepparton or in that surrounding area. Everyone
become popular.
Yeah, you become really unpopular. But if we're doing it, either in the middle of summer, spring or autumn, usually parts are readily available, or getting the install in is not such a big a problem.
Yeah, so that's interesting. So in the sense of, was it yearly checks or
2 yearly?
2 yearly.
Yep.
So say you find a heater.
Yep.
All right, you've talked to the landlord, you've serviced it, you think it's okay, but is it 2 years too long to wait, or do you sort of say, look, we need to go back there next year, or how does that work, or how do you keep on top of that?
Yeah, like legally, it's 2 years. So the thing is, it was probably a big stretch to try and get landlords to service their heaters at all at some stage. So 2 yearly is good. We'll obviously, so with an old heater now, we'll recommend putting a carbon monoxide alarm in, because at any stage in those 2 years, we could service it, and then, like say in autumn or spring, and then that next winter, cracked heat exchange or something like that, and potentially leak carbon monoxide. So if we've got that as a secondary backup, that's sort of, because otherwise it's not getting picked up until that next service.
And I guess the thing about carbon monoxide too, there's not a particular number if there's any evidence of carbon monoxide. So it's not a certain amount, it's just any reading of carbon monoxide, then that's potentially
So by law, do you have to shut that down regardless? Like, you don't even have to tell the landlord, you just say, I've done it, I've locked it out, you've got to work it out.
Well, we do. There's obviously a process. You can upset a landlord by doing that, and a tenant, especially if they're not home or things like that. But try to keep everyone involved as to what's going on. Give them a solution straight away. We might have to put a electric heater in there for the short term before we can get quotes approved and things like that.
We've got a couple of heaters we sort of hire around too.
So. Which it's about making them comfortable, and it is in those really.
But you've got no choice. What I'm trying to say is you're legally hand behind your
correct.
Behind your back.
And it's 0.01 is the so 0.01 is still isolate.
So Bree, when it comes to landlords, we understand that, and look, not every landlord's been a tenant, but most of them have it along the line. But a lot of them get into property for an investment and obviously make a return on their money. I think it's important to know that it affects them the other way too, isn't it? So if they don't keep up to date with things, the tenants as such have got a lot of legal avenues and sort of pull, but they've got extra avenues. So just explain that. Explain that to the audience about how that impacts them if they don't keep up to date and don't do things in a legal manner.
Yeah, certainly. Well, now failure to meet your compliance standards gives your tenants grounds to vacate immediately. That's a pretty severe penalty. So if a property doesn't have an updated smoke alarm, gas and electrical safety certificate, then the tenant, when they find that out, has grounds to give no notice, vacate the premises immediately, and also without penalty. So, in an ordinary lease situation, you've got a tenant locked in for a 12-month lease, they want to vacate, we would say, all right, well, there are penalties that you'll have to, financial penalties that you'll pay. Whereas in these circumstances, you wouldn't be able to enforce any of that. They can walk away with no ramifications, which then leaves our clients, the landlords, suffering a financial loss while the property's vacant.
Yeah, and that becomes an expensive process in itself. So they miss out on rent, they miss out on all sorts of things. They'll re-list the property, re-advertise the property. So there's a lot of ramifications in keeping on top of that.
Absolutely. And at the moment, yes, we're in the middle of a really high demand area. Rentals are at an all-time high as far as demand goes, but we're not going to be in this position forever. So at the moment, it's relatively easy to find a new tenant to go into a property should, somebody vacate. But down the line, the market's going to slow down. We're going to be in a position where these properties need to be compliant so that we can keep tenants, because you don't have the demand of another one ready to go in.
Yep. Yeah, that's interesting, isn't it? So I think it's important, like with our office, that we get some every business has got it. Like landlords that are old school or got that mentality. We actually just say don't worry about it. We'll just give you a hand of the file back.
Absolutely.
We're finding a number of agents are doing that now.
Yeah. Well, it's the legal ramifications of that to your business,
Yes.
to our business, and the landlord doesn't probably get this, but to themselves.
Absolutely.
Oh, absolutely.
Yeah.
Everyone's exposed.
Yeah, well, these days you've got to read your insurance PDS really closely as well, because if your property's not compliant and, say something happens, house fire, that's a great example, house burns down, there is likely to be a clause in your insurance policy saying that you're not covered because you haven't got a property that's compliant with legislative minimum standards.
That's
That's a pretty big issue.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Yeah. Go for it.
Sorry, Rocky. That, and I guess that's one of the things that we try and do as a business is to try and convince landlords and certainly the agents that we should do all three services. So we offer the three services of smoke alarms, electrical safety check, and gas safety check. So we try and encourage that we do all three of those, so that there's that one area, I guess, or one business that's looking after all three things. We have the records. We have the records of the appliances that are in the premises, whether we've had to put in any sort of alarm in the interim between the next check. So that just allows that peace of mind, I guess, for the renter, for the owner, and for the agent to know that we're monitoring that for them over that period of time, and they're not having to be looking at calendars and wondering whether things need to be done. So we take that problem away, I guess.
Yeah.
It's also for property managers too. Like it's be a massive job to organise trades and remember when services are due and things like that. So. We try and take the load off them as well.
Oh, it helps, yeah, definitely.
Oh, absolutely.
I mean, the law changes are just, I think we've had 255 law changes since COVID.
Yeah.
Massive. Like, the general public don't understand how the impact it puts on, the property management girls and the stresses they're under to sort of keep on top of it, let alone deal on the day-to-day.
Once upon a time there used to be accidents, now it's just liability. So,
Absolutely. Property management now is about risk mitigation to us, to you, to our clients, and to our tenants.
And our business is exactly the same. It's just helping people mitigate those risks.
And you've got documented. So a lot of them do crack the shits when you tell them, they go, oh, well, it is what it is.
Yeah.
But have your property back. And I sort of look at you and just say, why would you give them the property back? Don't you want my business? Well, we do want your business, but not if you want to do it according to how we want to do it. Because at the end of the day, we're liable, they're liable.
Yeah.
And it's all about liability, like you said. But I'd hate, look, personally, imagine if I couldn't imagine owning a rental property and someone dying in it because I didn't want to pay for a check. And forget about the insurance job. It's just about, like, how could you live with yourself?
Yeah,
no one wants to live with that. And also, we mentioned before that, there's potentially manslaughter charges or anything
That's
like
what I mean,
against, criminally against all parties involved.
Yeah. So we get audits. Do you have an audit where you get audited how you go about it? Do you have some certain criteria you have to meet through the government to take? So can you go through that?
Yeah. So basically, with every gas service that we do, we have to send that through to the VBA. There's obviously strict criteria that we've got to follow with that. Energy Safe Victoria is the electrical component of that, and they've got strict criteria which we have to follow to do that as well. So, there's always audits, and the thing is that it's usually when something goes wrong that's when they're called in to have a look and see if there is a paper trail, and basically that's where we come in for the landlord and the property manager and the real estate to say, we use our last 7 years of these records. We can prove that there was no negative pressure in the at that time of service. All that sort of stuff is really invaluable to a landlord and a property manager, and sometimes gets missed when it comes down to a cost component of getting the local tradie to come and service my heater or whatever. That's fine for that particular service. It's sort of more so when it hits the fan that we need all the paperwork and that we can back
up there. It sort of protects them, doesn't it, a little bit? Like, at the end of the day, they probably don't realise it, but they are getting protected. You're actually engaged to protect. By engaging your business and obviously the agency that does it, it actually alleviates them from the concern.
Absolutely.
If we've given them the tick and we've done it, then they've shifted. And it probably brings us to our point, Breeze. There's a lot of private landlords out there and that rent the property privately who aren't up to date with. So explain that process and what the difference, the benefits, Bree, would be for it to actually rent it through an agency. Doesn't have to be ours, but any agency, as well as versus managing it themselves.
Yeah, certainly. Oh, look, when you engage a professional agency to manage your property, you're paying for that level of expertise. So you're paying for us to be up to date with those legislation changes, which are rapidly evolving. New ones are being discussed every week, and we stay on top of that. We work with companies, like yourselves, to ensure that we are maintaining records, to put your property in the best position it can be should anything happen down the line, both legally but also, as you were talking about before, Rocky, that personal responsibility as well. I think it's great to be a private landlord, but I also look at it and go, well, you might be in a position where you've bought a property and you've put your friend in it. And your friend's been living there for a couple of years and the relationship's really laid back. So they pay rent on time, but that's the extent of your engagement with the property. They do their own maintenance. Well, what if something happens? And you've had this really casual relationship, which has been great up until the point that you're now facing a scenario where, for example, there's been a gas leak, your friend's been unwell, or something in the property's been affected by that, and you as a landlord, you haven't conducted your maintenance, you haven't conducted your compliance checks. You're now in a really vulnerable position.
Really exposed.
Really exposed.
Yep.
And what started out as a great little proposition between you and a friend, you're helping each other out, they're paying your mortgage, you're giving them somewhere to live. What started out as a really positive thing is now turned into something where, you're exposed on a number of different levels and you're opening yourself up to a lot of different points of liability. That's, I think,
criminally and civilly.
Yeah, criminally, civilly. And I think that's the beauty of a real estate agency is that, we take away a lot of those issues and depersonalise it a bit as well.
Yeah.
I mean, I have a lot of empathy for my tenants. I have a lot of empathy for my landlords as well. But at the end of the day, my job is to ensure that everybody's safe.
Yep.
Interesting.
Sorry.
Go for it.
What you're saying about the records, Bree, that's absolutely relevant as well, and the same with us. All the records that we have with the properties that we're managing, that we've visited, and the work that we've done. Again, the mate's got a mate who's an electrician. Comes in and fixes something. Oh, he fixed that a couple of years ago. There's no record of it.
Yeah,
Absolutely, absolutely.
Yeah, that's
Cashy,
right.
whatever. Whereas we're sending in qualified electricians, specifically qualified gas plumbers to go in and do these works. So there's that. Well, it's not a complete indemnity, but there's some sort of mitigation of the risk and indemnity as far as the landlords are concerned.
It's interesting. The world's changed. 255 law changes since COVID. I can't keep up with it myself. We're actually running a business. So I couldn't tell you 5 changes of law are the most important. So I don't know how the normal person out there understands it. Our landlords wouldn't know most of the changes. They're getting educated. I don't understand how a private. But what's interesting is though we've changed to a different era. Is when ignorance used to be a defence. Yeah. Ignorance is no longer a defence anymore.
No, not at all.
So I don't know. I rented it privately. Well, that won't stand up anymore.
Not at all.
So I think it's important. And touching back on yours, Bree, before it's funny, landlords and tenants, and look, not saying everyone, but 90% of the time it's okay, but it's that 1% or 10% that's not. And I've just seen some horrible relationships break up.
Yeah.
And I've seen some terrible properties, and a lot of it's because they don't really want to step on each other's toes because they've got that relationship.
Yeah.
We have a lot now that go, look, I've rented this to my son, my daughter, or my friend, or my brother, but we want you to manage it. So a lot of them have the smarts to actually put that separation, pay that fee, and get it sorted so it's protected for them.
Look, we're the same. We've had people want to argue over a $4 part. That's got something to do with maybe keeping someone alive.
Yeah, which is bizarre, and we get it too, don't we? And that's what you're battling all the time. But at the end of the day, they've got to protect themselves as well as us, don't they?
Yeah.
It's a really high percentage. So it'd be higher than 90% that we go into a property for the very first time, whether that's a new investor or whatever, and there's non-compliance in there. So, and if that doesn't get dealt with, or just is rented to a friend or whatever, they're sitting in a non-compliant property. So,
sitting on a time bomb.
So how does that go when you go into a non-compliant property, Lucas, and you do a thing and the landlord refuses to do it? So bring me back to earlier in our podcast when you mentioned you got to send it off to Energy Australia.
Yep.
So you still send that off?
Definitely, yeah.
And do they take over?
They take over. Yep. So in a gas scenario, that's what happens. So we have to look. We still have to isolate it to protect us and you guys, the real estate, as well as the landlord. They don't realise that we're protecting them as well. But we still have to isolate it. But then we send that through. Straight away, pretty much, if they decide that they don't want to play ball, but and then they get involved. So
we're like the bad parent, don't we? Like the kid growing up thinking we're the bad parent. All we're doing is trying to protect them.
That's right. Yeah.
We're the bad guys, but all we're trying to do is like protect them from yourself.
Correct. Yep.
And certainly that form goes off, but our role is to then work with people like Bree to say, right, look, we need to get your landlord to understand where things are at and that we've got a solution for them.
Yeah.
But if they don't want to, then obviously, that has to go through the authorities and it's taken over from there.
That's interesting to know that. It's good. Let's get it back up and check. So it's interesting for landlords listening to this and tenants. There's that protection there that you know you're doing your job. And I suppose if you are a tenant, my advice would be if it's not managed through an agency and it's a private, make sure you get your checks done. Make sure you keep the landlord accountable, just for your own safe.
Absolutely.
And look, the landlord should be really doing the right thing. You know, we don't like to take them on regardless. If they don't want to do it, we just put them back, give them their file back and take it somewhere else. We're finding that they'll bounce from agency to agency.
Yes.
No one wants to take it on.
No.
Well, we find them bouncing.
That's right.
Yeah.
No, it's been terrific. This has been a great chat. Very, very enlightening. I think a lot of landlords and tenants would benefit a lot from this. So, do you want to add anything else to the?
One of the things so there's obviously gas has been a big component of this, but electrical, and obviously there's been a massive change with upgrading switchboards and all that sort of stuff just recently. So one of the main things is if you're getting a switchboard upgraded, you need a prescribed certificate. What that means is not just a general Sparky upgrading the switchboard for either cash or whatever, because basically when you get a switchboard upgraded, an inspector has to inspect that. So everyone's covered. So if it comes through with a normal CES, then it's not correct. So it needs to come through with a prescribed CES with an inspector's signature to say that it's been done.
Take that back, Bree, and make sure we get the girls to follow that through. But also any landlords, and it's interesting to know. It's good to know.
So that's
and that inspection's a completely independent inspection by an electrical safety inspector,
which is good
to make sure that whoever's doing the job is doing it properly.
It's a good line. Nothing worse than not if you're didn't do the job properly and then thing burns down, you cop it, don't you?
Well,
everyone cops it.
And we all cop it.
Yeah, absolutely.
Don't worry, it's even worse when we go into a property and they've just had their switchboard upgraded by someone else and we say it's non-compliant. And that's
hard. That forked out some, what would be a couple of $1,000, wouldn't it?
Well, it could be, in certain stages,
depending how old it is.
You'd be popular.
Yes.
Well, that's right, and really we should be the popular ones and the electrician should be the unpopular one, but it's...
you cop it. But the person that delivers the bad news always has it.
Yeah, absolutely.
Did you have anything to add, Bree, anymore?
No, I think we've covered it all.
No, I think that's been a pretty good chat.
Yeah. I think it is important to the audience out there is that if it's intrigued you today and it's obviously picked some topics that paramount to yourselves, reach out to Lucas, give him a call and or Peter and give them a call and ask them more questions and see what your services provides and give Bree a call at our office and we can help you out too as well. So it's all this podcasts are all about trying to inform and the audience out there and all related to real estate. So I think today's been a really good informative session and thanks for joining us, Pete.
No, absolutely.
Thanks so much for having us on the podcast. Yeah, we really appreciate it.
Thanks, Bree. Hope you don't go back to being a lawyer or anything like that. Just keep your charge rates down a bit if you can. We just got to tell our landlords you're not charged by 6 minute increments. Thanks for joining us today and hope to see you soon. Have a good one. Thanks for listening. Please subscribe on your favourite podcast platform so you don't miss upcoming episodes. We would love you to share this podcast with your network, and if you have any questions or feedback, please connect with us via our social network or head to gagliardiscott.com.au.